everybody, welcome to another episode of One More Day Straight Talk Live Suicide Prevention. Today we're joined by a guest who you want to hear the definition of patriotic, has dedicated 4 decades of his life to serving this country, and military police, if I'm not correct. Is that true, C? You spent most of your career in military police? And I mean, that is just some true dedication. And first, let me start by saying thank you. See, thank you so much for dedicating your entire adult life to this country. And welcome.
Thank you.
So anyway, today we're going to talk about, primarily focus on the different programs that the National Guard is utilizing to fight suicide. And believe me when I say that they have some of the best programs I've seen. And even if they're not currently using all the ones, they're looking into them already. So let's start out with a big welcome, C. And you want to tell us a little bit about your career just to start out?
Well, I think probably everyone that's listening has a copy of the resume there, or should I say the bio, and it's probably boring to say the least. But
not at all, brother.
4 decades, and when you say it out loud, it makes me sound old. And I am, but it has been a privilege to serve, serve my nation, the Air Force, our National Guard, since December of 1982. And you're right, I joined when we had security police and not security forces, and we were still doing some training in the Air Force, the way we did some training for our bases, outside the perimeter for Vietnam, which was where security forces had the immediate area right outside. So I went to the Security Police Academy, and then after that, I went to Air Base Ground Defense at Lackland Air Force Base at Camp Bullis, Texas, where I learned what humility was really like, because our training environment was foxholes, the whole 9 yards, but the cleaning environment was probably a little more. And where we went to this big area, and there was just 2 rows of commodes where they actually, just backed up to each other. There were no partitions, and the only thing you saw were the washing machines and the shower, where you had to wear your shower shoes to keep mud from being on your feet. So, so that was my entrance to the United States Air Force, where I thought it was going to be beautiful and rosy, and it was humbling but great. And going through different assignments, including being down in Central America and Panama, Howard Air Force Base, which I thought was a great assignment. It was right at the end of Operation Just Cause, and wearing plain clothes was something that I didn't think you did in the military unless you're off duty. And so having an opportunity to do that was pretty cool. And then of course, switching over to the Guard when I got back to the United States after being at Moody Air Force Base, learning about some of the different challenges and changes that happen being a part of a Guard as a traditional Guardsman. Then of course 9/11 happened, and as a first sergeant, I never went back to my civilian career, and here we are that many years later, and I'm sitting here as a senior enlisted advisor to the Chief of the National Guard Bureau. And man, I still don't know how it happened, but I'm here. But I tell you what, it is an honor and a privilege to serve our 440,000+ soldiers and airmen, and that doesn't include their families, our civilians. And one other important key part of that is the employers. We don't talk about that enough, but our employers help. They're a key factor in the equation of the success that we have as a National Guard. So we'll go with that, so that I don't put anybody to sleep about my career.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. We don't mention the employers, and it's the flexibility they give our Guardsmen that allows our Guardsmen to do what they do. And so, yeah, if anybody's listening to this employer, thank you. So anyway, the first question that we always hit our guests with, and it's a tough one, and it's going to hit you. How the hell do we reduce stigma associated with asking for help? I mean, we've got, on our special operations side, or pilots, any of those people are concerned about, hey, my security clearance is gone if I do this. The rest of them think they're going to kick me out if I admit I'm having mental troubles. You and I know the truth, but I'm going to let you take it from there and talk about how far we've come on those fronts.
Well, I tell you what, you came out of the gate swinging. And that's a good question, because it's one that if you talk about having an opportunity to have a candid conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would say when it comes to getting after it and really having the conversation about it and taking the stigma away is, for those that are wearing a uniform, is stop listening to people that don't know a damn thing about what it takes to deal with it. And to get into the details of that, having PRP in the past, working with missiles. So I got that and a few other things where it's important to have a clearance. Folks will tell you that have probably never dealt with it before. If you go tell somebody about this, they're going to take your clearance away. If you say something about this, you may lose the right to carry your weapon. Well, you know what? Depending upon what it is, and it's probably more of a disciplinary issue and maybe a behavioral issue, that's where some of those things come into play. But the reality is you've got to go talk to the professionals about what that really means, because it may be the case where they're not going to take your weapon away. They're not going to take your security clearance. But if they do, it's so that you can get after what's important, and that's to get the help that you need so that we can get you back into the fight. Then and only then, can you feel like, hey, I'm fully up and capable and ready to go. And it may be a case of just suspending your clearance, suspending your right to bear arms for a bit, and that's for the sake of you, your family, and your battle buddies in the wingman. So that's one of the ways. The stigma too to get away from is that there's weakness to it. If you do that, that may challenge the opportunities for promotion. That's a load of crap as well. Again, what we find is that we've got a lot of folks that wear uniform that have had challenges over the years. They've dealt with those challenges. They've gotten the help that they needed. And I can tell you right now, those are some of the best leaders that we have, because those are engaged leaders that can find those signs that they see in their service members, and they can get after them and help them get them the help that they need, or help them get to the people that can actually help them. And I want to tell you, that's how we do it. Engaged leadership. And engaged leadership comes from having honest conversations, giving honest feedback, giving honest answers, and again, getting away from the BS of people that have never had to deal with this stuff, giving answers, and they really don't know what they're talking about.
I still believe that half the time when someone's saying they're going to take my clearance, that's somebody who needs help that just has never got it. And they're so scared they're passing on that rumor, even though whether it's true or not. We see that all the time with a lot of the people we help. The ones that are bad mouthing it are the ones who need the help the most. So, when you hear somebody say that, turn it around on them and make sure you're asking them, hey, how are you doing? Have you been, have you had to ask for help? You said it, what you just said was so perfect on for one of our guests a couple of months ago about the senior leaders who have done it. SEAC, who we were just talking about, got promoted to the most senior enlisted person in the military while he was going through his mental health training. So, if anybody has any questions about promotions, that should answer that pretty easy. But other ways, we do have, stigmas in multiple areas. The other thing that we really see a lot of is people don't understand what treatment actually means. They get into that auto focus where they think it means I'm going to get locked up in a mental institution and I may never get out because my problems are so much worse than everybody else's. And how would you respond to someone thinking that?
So that's one of those things where, one, I'm not a doctor, so I can't give details. But what I can tell you is this: there's so many different ways people are getting treated. There's just so different many forms of treatment that again, you got to ask the questions. And when people don't ask questions, they make assumptions. We have folks that are getting treatment every single day for things that they may see a professional, they may even call a professional, and when they're done, they go back to work. As simple as that. If they go away from the workplace for a day or two, however long it's going to be, they go get the help. They come back to work. There may be a reintegration process that they go through. It's no big deal. That's what they have to do. But I will tell anybody that's listening that is challenged by this or struggling with, whether or not to get the help. At the end of the day, the absolute best thing you could do is get help for yourself. For those that are surrounding you, meaning if you've got a support system in place, a family that loves you, a community that's caring about you, your battle buddy, your wingman. I mean, the list goes on and on. But that's the primary goal, is to get the help. Don't worry about those other things that people will talk to you about. Again, they don't have a freaking clue what it means. What we need to do is make sure that we tell the person, get the help. Get the help. It is not going, as a matter of fact, it may help your career as opposed to hurt it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt the senior leaders know when you're struck. I mean, it's not hard. Patterns start erupting as you're having problems, missing work, drinking more, fighting with your your buddies, people who you would fight in a foxhole for. So yeah, it can certainly benefit your career. And most importantly, one of the things that we like to talk about on the treatment hesitancy is that it is so very rare that someone is committed who comes forward to get help. That just doesn't happen. I mean, most of the PTSD treatments out there now are 2 to 3 weeks, 1 hour a day on a computer. So there's very little chance of getting committed when you're working over the computer. So it's just, and we say it, if you're struggling and you need help, reach out to your command, reach out to us. Chaplains, I mean, my God, they are literally heaven sent, but I mean, and figuratively as well, they are an incredible resource for you. We hear a lot of questions come up on that one too. Well, if I tell my chaplain that I'm having real mental issues, he's required to tell my CO. And we hear that from so many of the active duty people. And I'm sure by the way you smiled and shook your head, you can respond to that one the same way I will.
Yeah. Hey, show me in writing where it says that, Show me in writing where it says that. And we just have to get away again from making assumptions based on what we've heard from somebody that's probably, in the barracks down the hall from us, or the person sitting right next to us drinking, telling us, hey, this is what's going to happen to you. No, let's go find out exactly what's possible, when it comes to getting help. And again, the goal is to get the help, not to introduce barriers to getting help. And that's one of the things, again, I'll say to a leader or anyone that's listening, stop introducing barriers to getting help. Look for possible solutions and get them. And if you're concerned about whether or not somebody is going to get their clearance taken away, or if someone is going to go tell, how about the person that's giving you that advice go with you? Go with you. If you're that concerned about your battle buddy, your wingman, not being able to do the things they need to do after they ask for help, go with them to make sure that they get the help that they need. They keep their clearance, they keep their weapon, their command doesn't know. And think about this, you want the command to know. And I say that because sometimes when you think about how we set ourselves up for success and how we set ourselves up for promotions and what's going to happen in the future, the worst thing you can do is to teach those subordinates who will one day be in charge how to do things the wrong way. And the wrong way is to not keep the command, informed of what's going on, because at some point in time, they're going to be in command and they want to make sure that the people keep them informed. But if they're being taught not to, then guess what? That's exactly what's going to happen to them. And if you don't want that to be a cycle, speak up.
Chief, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to jump to a question. I'm not sure if you're seeing them or not, but one of them is C. Whitehead excited to know that Maryland ANG is sitting in? Hello from Chief Botroff and Chief Edmonds. Chief Edmonds, I know I invited her. I thought let you respond to that one.
Well, yeah, Chief Edmonds is this eternal cheerleader. I'm sure you better. There's energy there that I don't know where she gets it from, but an awesome chief. And Botoff, he'll have to tell you offline what run DMC means, because I'm still not satisfied with the answer he gave me.
Okay. Hey, there's an interesting fact actually, and I appreciate the writer putting that in. Only 0.00115% of clearance denials are for mental health reasons. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I would believe it these days. 10 years ago, I think it was a different story, but today it sounds right, because most people we deal with do not lose their clearance.
I'm looking at that name, and it may be one of our airmen that had a question on LinkedIn about mental health and about the 4 C's in the National Guard. And I believe that's where that last name comes from. And so I have to believe they know what they're talking about, because they probably have access to that information, that data, and those metrics.
Yep, I just clarified it right below that, so we're good to go on that. But yeah, I agree with you. Stop making excuses for why you can't go. The bottom line is forget clearance, forget everything. The important thing today is keeping you healthy. That's what matters. We'll deal with everything else. Let us deal with that. That's why we named our organization One More Day. Right now, when you're having some issues, let's worry about today. Let's worry about how we get you better and how we get you back to fighting strength, because that's your goal, right? So let's do it.
Hey, so before we get off that, when it comes to those barriers to getting help, I was talking with someone in the office not too long ago, and we were talking about something I always call, being squared away. And I think it's important to share this, especially with both leaders and those that may be struggling. It's something that's institutional with us in the military. You think about it when you went off to basic military training, boot camp, whatever you want to call it. You learned about being squared away, and you wanted to get there as soon as humanly possible. You wanted to make sure that everything about you was dress right dress. And that's the way you wanted to live. And some still do want to live their entire military career dress right dress. There's no kinks in their armor. They won't find any faults or any deviations in how they get the job done. But at the end of the day, we're not all squared away. We all have challenges. We all have things that we're dealing with. And even again, as you said, the highest member of our enlisted force and the entire armed forces, has sought help, and CZ is very comfortable with sharing that with us, and so as many other leaders. And we have to remind the youngest of our soldiers and our airmen service members that there's absolutely nothing wrong with everything not being right. It is not humanly possible. There's going to be challenges with your personal finances. There's going to be challenges with things that are going on with your head and your heart that we don't know about, that you've got to share with somebody. Because if you got folks that have been around, to include myself being around for 4 decades, guess what? We've dealt with it. We've dealt with it, and you can talk to us about it. You don't want to go talk to a professional, come talk to us, and we will get you to that professional, make you realize that, what? Things can be bad. They can get worse, but at the end of the day, they're going to get better. But we've got to get you to get the help to get better. But again, not everyone is squared away, and we've got to make folks realize that you're not going to come to work sharp, crisp every day, get the job done for 8 to 10, 12 hours, then you go home and absolutely nothing's wrong. Those are the things you got to realize, that if you're walking into a shop, a section, or a formation, there are people in that formation that have dealt with things. And the reason they're still standing is because they dealt with it. And you got to ask them, how did they get there?
And you're so right on that. We just have to quit looking at everything like it is a bad. If you can't, when we all got to boot camp, most of us sucked at our shooting. We weren't good enough. And the question is, did you quit? Did you walk away? How did you get good at it? We practiced and we practiced. It's the same thing with mental health. There is no simple, when you're looking at suicide, it is a very, as they say, I know it's cliche, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that is so true. If you look at it, everything in the military is focused on getting better, not starting at the peak. You get better and same thing with mental health. So I say we just do away with stigma, but that's me.
Hey, you're right. And if you got the answer, you got to share it with us as well.
I do. Just freaking ignore it. It doesn't exist. It's simple. Get health makes you stronger. Just like everything else in our military careers. Keep doing it. You get stronger, better. Simple. I'm sorry.
Hey, no, I'm glad you said that. Before we get off that, I think it's important to say this too, because you're pretty open-minded, but more importantly, you say things that a lot of folks don't say. But we got to quit the double talk. And what I mean by that is, we can't say things in a formation that we have to say because somebody's given us a memo to say it, and then when it's gone, we have another conversation. The things that we say in our office when the doors closed, the things that we say in those patrol cars, the things that we say in those Humvees, the things that we say when we go to happy hour, those are the same messages we need to be saying in front of our formation. And that is, get help. There is no stigma to getting help. But if you can't say that, then you got to make a choice as to whether or not you still need to be in charge of our folks.
And I get in trouble for this a lot because you're right. I just say it like it is and deal with the repercussions later. But the only stigma that it should exist is for not getting help. I'm sorry, but if you don't get help, there should be a stigma associated with that. Because if anything is not a strength, a sign of strength is not getting the help you need. We need you to stay alive. Get the frickin' help. All right, sorry, I get really emotional in that concept. I hate hearing people because they don't want to get help because they're afraid what Joe will think. Don't care. Just get the help. Next is a subject, and Chief, you and I have talked about this. Lethal means safety and storage. I think right now is probably the most important issue that we have to deal with. When I say lethal means, I mean, let's reword that. Safe storage, safe handling instead of just lethal. It's not just guns, it's pills. It's everything that can take you out. We want to make sure that it's cared for properly. If you have a gun in your house, that's great. Hell, I've got a bunch of them, but keep them in a safe. Keep them in the little personal one. Make sure that children can't get to them. And I know I've heard friends of mine who say, well, I don't have kids in the house, so I don't worry about it. Well, until their brother comes over with his kids and suddenly we've got a shooting. So it has to be a full-time thing that you care for that gun. We do want to show just yesterday, and it worked out to be such great timing. We want to show a video that's really hard hitting. And Chief, I'd like to go back and forth with you chatting about that a little bit. Bo, can you play that second video?
I know my gun should be stored locked and unloaded. But what good is a gun if it's not prepared for use? So instead, I'm prepared for misuse. I'm prepared to stop arterial bleeding in 3 minutes. Less for kids, they bleed out faster. My son just shot himself. Hurry. Access to firearms triples your risk of death by suicide. But that's not the only way to misuse a gun.
I think I heard Mama.
Misuse can happen when you least expect. So being prepared means knowing the difference between CPR for adults and kids. Unintentional shootings happen every day.
There's been another deadly shooting in a local elementary
So that sense of safety my guns bring me
school. The gun he acquired from the family member's home.
can shatter in an instant.
The developing story will bring you more updates as they happen.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
That is a hard-hitting video. I mean, it really shows what we're talking about, why we're talking about it. And Chief, see your thoughts on that?
Well, I wrote down two things right away. One that was used in it. It was prepared for misuse, and the other was my comfort level does not equal security. And what I mean by that in the first one, then we talk about prepared for misuse. Just think about it. Everybody on this line, I'm sure, has been a teenager. And at some point in time, when no matter what your parents have told you, you've had your own thoughts about what you were going to do. And then when you were kind of perusing around the house and you found something, your curiosity got the best of you. Your curiosity got the best of you. And one of the things we've got to learn as adults, as parents, and I'm not preaching or teaching to anyone, but I'll just tell you from our perspective, we've got to remember that, the things that we think about from where we are and where we are positioned in life is not the same thing as a teenager, as a wandering toddler, as somebody that visits your home that's curious about what this is and what this does. Your weapon is your weapon. If there are rounds and if there's a bullet in the chamber, a round in the chamber, you know it, you're comfortable with it, but that doesn't mean that the person that's handling it will be as well. And the chief of the National Guard Bureau talks about, getting gun locks for as many of our guard members as much as possible, for their homes because of that very reason. If you're a person like yourself, is comfortable with having weapons in your home, you are. That doesn't mean that everyone that comes to your home or that handles your weapon is as equipped and as adept as you are at handling that weapon. And you got to think about that, because as you said, as you saw with that, the little girl in particular, they have no idea, and it may be too heavy for them. They drop the weapon and it goes off. And again, you were thinking nobody's gonna use this weapon, and if they do, it's probably not gonna go off. You never know. So again, it's there for misuse. If you're not safely putting it away. And I can't say it enough, and I can't stress it enough. And thank you for showing this video, is that we have got to think about other people and not so much ourselves when it comes to gun safety. And the other part about the comfort level and security, if you've got a weapon in your home for the security of you and your family, that's absolutely fine. You know how to handle it. You know where it is. You need to know whether or not that there's rounds in the chamber. You need to know who knows where that weapon is. And the reality is, you don't know who knows where that weapon is. You don't know who knows whether or not there are rounds in the chamber. You don't know if they're equipped to do the right thing, which is to come and find you. So don't put things in place that are, again, at your comfort level, and you're forgetting about other people that are there or that may come to visit. And that definitely includes medication, because as you said, we're men of a certain age. So I do have medication, and just making sure that it's away, from a younger kid, that doesn't mean that they can't get access to it. That's why we have step ladders and stools and things around the house. find safe places for those things where they can't get to that stuff. Think about them and not just yourself.
And you're right. See, that is such a good example about, our age here. Something as simple and so seemingly innocuous as or blood pressure medication can kill kids, dogs in a second. I mean, it'll drop their heart rate to almost nothing and they're dead. So you're right. We need to be careful with that. But, with this, we're really, we're trying to focus on the firearm side only for the reason the video, number one. But I think just as importantly, the reason that we want to have it locked up, aside from protecting everybody else, just to protect you, is the problem in suicide with firearms is there is a 1/10 of a second to decide to end my life and pull a trigger. There is no margin for error in that time frame. There isn't. I mean, that's why the only people who survive are generally going to be a misfire. But once you made that decision, if you've got a firearm, pretty much you're dead. So that's why we really stress putting it in a safe, separate. I mean, even if you got to keep it in your house, that's great and that's fine. Put it in a little personal safe where it just takes that extra couple minutes to go get it, because the bottom line is if you can stall that decision just for even 10 seconds, your chances of living and surviving double. It's just that simple. I'm sure Command Sergeant Major Tom Satterley. He was Delta's Command Sergeant Major forever. The guy that you would think would never have a mental health issue. He was sitting in his truck with a gun to his head, and he shares the story openly. So it's not me telling his story. And he was about to pull the trigger when he got a text from his brand new girlfriend saying, "Hey, I just think something's wrong." And just amazingly, that little bit of time to read the text changed his decision. He is now an advocate for suicide prevention. And, it's just amazing how we can just put that little bit of time between decision and action. You will make it through the night. And that's all we care about, folks, is that you survive. And then tomorrow, let's get you the help. Tonight, let's get you the help, whenever it is. Just give yourself that little break. So put your gun in a personal safe that sits right next to your bed. 2.5 seconds is what it takes to open one of the ones with the code. So you can't say that that's going to stop you from saving yourself. I can assure you that in pretty much every case in history, 2.5 seconds was not the difference. So just be safe with it.
Hey, there's a second order effect, and I thank you for bringing it back to the center with regard to the individual and suicide. We still have to worry about that with the members of our family too. And if you think about it, if we can actually do exactly what you just said, there's a very good chance that our kids can't find that weapon, especially those that may be struggling, and try to use that weapon to harm themselves.
Yeah, and exactly. And lethal means is about so much more than just protecting the person at risk. It's about, because bottom line is everybody in your home is at risk. If you have a gun in that home, if you have medications in that home, we're all at risk. And, we've seen it, unfortunately, too many times where when the service member does get to that point, they believe, hey, my family can't survive without me. And then we've just got a huge mess. So I just want to make sure that we're really working hard to keep that, give us some time between decision and action. That's all I ask, is do that. C, do you have any other points on, well, really anything that we've talked about so far?
So you hit a trigger with that last statement there. Family can't survive without me. That's one of those things that come with engaged leadership when we start hearing those things from people. Those clues that something's going on. Mm-hmm. And when people start talking about or thinking about, hey, the world would be better without me. Those are some of the things that we need to start listening for. When they start talking about how the family would do better if I'm out of the way, if I'm not in the picture anymore, what exactly does that mean? And we've got to probe. That's where we start getting into their business. And I would rather have somebody pissed off at me and alive for getting in their business than stepping back and saying, well, I don't want to go there with them. I don't want to, it's another guy. You want to keep that guy space. I'm saying it, you want to keep that guy space. You want to get into their business. And that may have been the only clue that they have been able to give to you that something is wrong. and you got to go with it. You got to follow up with it. Follow that lead and see where it goes. Because if they're thinking that people can be or will be better off without them, why are you thinking that? You know, what is it that make you believe that that's the case? You know, how can we get you back to where you can deal with whatever the challenges are, as opposed to thinking that this is the easy way to deal with it?
Yeah, you're right on the money there. We just, you know, I'll tell you a little story. When I first started this, I lost 4 of my best friends and brothers from the service within an 18-month period to suicide. And the first one hit me like a ton of rocks because I was so angry. We'd done family vacations the whole time we'd been out, and I didn't see a thing wrong. And then the second one hit, and it was even worse. And by the time we lost the 4th, I tried to be number 5, but what I mentioned about a misfire saved me. And, you know, I figured out quickly that my choices were simple. I could either do something to help or I would become number 5. So I decided to start this. And I wanted to learn everything I possibly could. So I figured, you know, I watched everything and I went through a couple trainings. And by the way, I would suggest anybody in the audience who actually wants to help, there's a bunch of awesome online training programs, cost 20 to 50 bucks. And it's just basically designed to get you the comfort level to speak to your buddy. I know the Guard, we want to talk about that in just a second, has a bunch of great programs also. But what I was saying is, I lost my track. Sorry, I totally lost
It's all right.
my focus. Okay, so anyways, I'm watching all these videos and learning. And I know, you know, I've seen all this stuff that looks so great, but the numbers keep climbing every year. This is back in probably 2007, 8 by now. And so I decided, okay, I've got to talk to families who've survived someone taking their life. So I found these 10 families and I'm talking to them all, and they're all telling me the same thing. Man, it's so impossible because there were no signs. And by the 10th one, I'm just getting freaking angry because how can I learn if I don't know what to watch for? Well, I'm sitting in an airport. I'm coming back from vacation. I'm in the bar and I'm sitting there with my laptop open and I'm making this cool little flyer for suicide prevention. This guy sits next to me and he said, "Oh, do you do suicide prevention?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I am a psychiatrist. My subspecialty is suicide prevention." So I'm telling him how pissed off I am that all these families, you know, had nothing I could learn because there were no signs. And he starts laughing. He literally almost falls off his stool. And he said, "Dave, I guarantee you there were signs. They didn't know to watch for them." So he takes a napkin like this is some bar hookup and he writes down 10 questions and he says, "I want you to go back to these families and I want you to ask them this." I guarantee at least half of them will check at least 4 or 5 of these questions. So I got home and I went back to all 10 of them. And amazingly, 8 out of 10 hit all 10 of his questions and the other 2 hit 6 and 5. Of the, you know, that all these were symptoms like, was the person drinking more? Was the person withdrawing from family and children? Were they, you know, that was all the level of the questions. And suddenly it dawned on me that the problem wasn't the programs. The problem was that we weren't educating the families around these people on, you know, what to look for, what to watch for. And all of a sudden it changed my entire focus from, you know, trying to help the individual to trying to help their family. And, you know, bottom line is if I train UC in suicide prevention, it's going to do 2 things without fail. One, it's going to help you because the tools you use in suicide prevention are used in everyday negotiations. You know, you learn, hey, I'm not here to listen to help. I'm here to listen to listen. And that's what the difference in a successful intervention is listening to listen instead of listening to help. People in crisis don't want our help. They just want to know that we want to help. They know that they know the solution already. It's getting them to it. And that's where, you know, it's so important that we just listen to do the help. So, yeah. And so, but anyway, on that story, it just amazed me that they all had the same answer until you could see that aha moment talking to each one of them when they realized, oh my God. And it was kind of a positive negative because it made them realize that there were signs. They just didn't realize it. And, you know, the ones that checked all the boxes were like, man, we should have seen this coming. And I think, no, you shouldn't, because we're doing, as a society, we're failing to train everybody. And that's why I know you guys now really stress training the family members, the community. And so, I thank you guys for being so forward thinking about that.
Well, hey, I appreciate that, but I tell you what, it doesn't come without work. And you mentioned it before, and I know a lot of our leaders talk about engaged leadership. And that's one of those things that that really, really, it's not a buzzword, it's a reality. I talk to folks now, and when I say there's a lot of things that our leaders can do, we have checklists for just about everything now. But there's one thing that we can't delegate to anybody, as leaders. We can't delegate humanity. That's hours and hours alone. We got to make sure that we're getting out there and getting eyes on our people as much as possible, having insignificant conversations with our folks, because in those insignificant moments, sometimes significant little tidbits will come out. And we've also got to think about the people that we're promoting into these positions that we're empowering to help our service members, because we have folks that will, if you look at a checklist for somebody and how do you see how they measure up for their next opportunity, academically and technically, yes. But if we're not checking off on the emotional intelligence part, where there's more to them than just the academics of who they are, then we're probably not promoting some right people. And they may not want to hear this, and there may be some leaders on there that don't agree with it. But we've got to think about who we're putting in positions to help our young service members. They're dealing with things that we've never had to deal with before. And we're dealing with things that they haven't. And some of those things is their coping skills aren't the same as ours. Their level of resilience and how they deal with things and bounce back is not the same as ours. That doesn't mean that they can't, but that's something that we ourselves have got to get involved in, which means there's going to be more to us. So, hey, you may have to earn that paycheck just a little bit more, but it'll be worth it if you've got that young service member that will come back just one more day, like you said. So it requires a lot of us, and it requires us to think about who we're putting in charge of our airmen, because again, we need every supervisor, whether it be official or unofficial leader, that's in place to help us have eyes on, to look for those cues, because there are things that we'll never see. In training scenarios, there are going to be young soldiers in foxholes that'll talk to that other PFC about things that they'll never talk to their staff sergeant about. So empower them to say, hey, listen, and if there's something that we need to know, this is not spying, this is to get your friend help. But they need to know, and that goes to what you were saying, training. Training, and that's my thing. In the Guard, when we talk for our enlisted force, educate, empower, and execute. And it just fits into what we're talking about today. If we educate our forces in all ranks in the formation, not only are they using it in the workplace, they're using it at home, and it's a force multiplier.
We kind of touched base a while ago. One of the areas that really also that I think stigma kind of screws us up in is PTSD. And the reason I think it's so hard, other than the obvious, I have to admit that, yes, I have this issue. But a lot of people think that the only people that should have PTSD are combat veterans, which is, 100% wrong. The vast majority of PTSD does not come from combat. And, we've got to get, I've heard it 1,000 times, well, your PTSD is much worse than mine. And I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a PTSD scale. PTSD is PTSD. It's just that freaking simple. And it comes from, there's so many things that can cause severe PTSD. And, combat certainly is one of them. And for those who have been there, I'm sorry you had to go through it. It sucks. But, something as simple as a car accident can cause severe PTSD. Having an abusive spouse is the biggest way, because that is the most recurrent cause of PTSD there is. And so there's all these things. So we need to stop trying to quantify our or somebody else's PTSD. Just leave it as you have post-traumatic stress. That's enough. You don't have to say how bad, how many times. And just because you only deployed once doesn't make you any less than somebody who deployed 12 times. So please, PTS is PTS.
Thank you for that. And I'll tell you, one of the things that, without being, an individual that has it myself, I'll say that one of the things that leaders have to be cognizant of is when they ignore those signs, and when they ignore people that talk about it, they exacerbate it. Mm-hmm. They've got to be mindful of that. And so please, if there's a leader out there, just think about this. And this is another education piece too. And it goes towards PTSD. And I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole about sexual assault, sexual harassment, but I think we've got to be very mindful of how we're teaching, training, and educating our leaders about invisible scars. The things that we don't see, just because it's not visible, that doesn't mean that it isn't true or that it doesn't exist. That's why we have professionals to help. And we've got to allow them to be able to do that. And we've got to respect our service members enough to let them go and seek the help that they need, and stop assuming that because we don't see anything or we don't see any obvious signs that it doesn't exist. Invisible scars mean that there's something there that we don't see that service member needs help for. And we need to allow them to get it, and we need to support them while they're getting the help.
I agree. And one thing that I really suggest, and I'm sure people get sick of hearing this, I'm not a big book reader. I'm just too freaking old and it takes too much time now. But I did read this book. It's called Rethinking Suicide. And it is it is a phenomenal book. It's written by a guy named Dr. Craig Bryan, who's one of the really top of the line suicide psychologists. And it really the name says it rethinks how we should deal with suicide. And a lot of that, which we'll talk about in a minute, is we're making a shift from the gatekeeper types programs to more peer-to-peer. Because what you just said is so perfect. That private first class is not going to go talk to an E8, E7 about his problems at home. He's going to go talk to another PFC. So we've got to have all the way down to that level trained in how to do it. Peer-to-peer, I like the best because number one, it's more inclusive. It covers everything. And two, it just teaches you how to talk to your buddy about problems. And I love it for that. So, that's just something great. We did get asked for a couple kind of housekeeping things. One is the availability of 988, which I'm sure you know about. The simplest way there is to get help, 988. If you're a veteran, active, anything military, hit 1. 2, people are asking about where they can get that video. It is bradyunited.org. It's on their site. Brady is in the Reagan Brady. And they just have done some incredible work on suicide prevention. So, okay, now to the whole purpose of the thing that we lost most of our time chatting. Programs that the National Guard is using to prevent suicide versus programs that are likely upcoming. What do you got?
All right, so what I obviously got them right here. I want to be sure, so I want to stumble over my words, but we've got a few. At the national level, and I'll say that, and I'll preface it with this. And I see that some of our Guard brothers and sisters or family members are on the line. The thing about being a part of the National Guard and the National Guard Bureau is that, we've got 54 states, the territories, the District of Columbia, and they've got unique ways of dealing with things because of, the cultures of their respective states. And so we've got programs that really work where they are, whether it be in the state of Maryland, which I see is on there, the state of, Iowa. I mean, the list goes on and on. So there are a lot of programs that are in their states that are specifically catered to, those, soldiers and airmen and their families. But here at the National Guard Bureau and our J1, we've got a START, which is a gatekeeper course, Prime for Life. And this is one that talks about getting help for our service members in a non-judgmental environment. And I think that's extremely important. Non-judgment is one of those things where we still struggle with, and therein lies that word stigma. Mm-hmm. So we've got to work on that even more. And of course, our warfighter brain fitness, that's something that's coming up, and it's about increased productivity in the mental health and acuity. And it's something that's online. Okay, Project Safeguard. And that goes to what you were talking about, when dealing with lethal means. And again, I think the National Guard Bureau is extremely, extremely adamant about the fact that we do have our service members. And this is call it a public service announcement, but a lot of our guardsmen are first responders. Mm-hmm. And we have to keep that in mind because, just because you're thinking that they can't get to the weapon in the armory, that doesn't mean that they can't get to the weapon. And so that's why it's important that we do as much as we can when it comes to the lethal means training and getting those safeguards in place. And then, of course, there are some that you see. I want to tell you about one from the Boulder Crest Foundation, and that's a pilot course that's happening. It's happening out in Arizona right now, and of course, they have one of the campuses here in Virginia. And I know you probably know about Josh Goldberg and Ken Falk. I mean, awesome people. But these are programs that are dealing with the individual and some of their struggles, because we always try to quantify or qualify a struggle with a name. And until we get there, some people think, well, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't get the help I need. And the reality is sometimes it doesn't have a name just yet. And so we've got to get you in to talk to someone and figure out exactly what that is.
And
And then again, we'll have a list of them that we'll put out there for people to see. But I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Oh, you guys have some of the best programs working right now. I know you're actually, I'm not sure if it's Safeguard, but the lethal means training, the same Dr. Craig Bryan is the creator, and I think it's Safeguard, but I'm not positive. It's 3-day training.
It's called Project Safeguard.
Okay, yeah. And you can't beat, he's also got the peer-to-peer I was talking about. He's got an incredible 3-day program. So, what I want to make clear to the folks that are listening is, no matter what, and like you said, it may not have a name, but honestly, I think, and this is just my opinion, and I'm probably going to get a million nasty emails when we're done about this. I think we become so focused on words. People get offended because I said PTSD. And my God, disorder doesn't mean that you can't fix it. It just means that right now something's out of check. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just a way we use for providers to get paid. Number one, it has to have the word disorder on there or insurance won't pay it. But two is it gives other folks that knowledge that, hey, we need to help. That's right now, we need to be there for you. So to me, we need to stop worrying about all these frickin' words and just concentrate on the problem and then how we solve it.
Yep.
Sorry.
That goes with just having, again, those great conversations, not only from a leadership perspective, but, the mid-level NCOs or even, our officers as well. It's like, listen, if, our commanders are saying, these are the programs, these are the things that we're moving out on. These are, our command memos or our command messages. These are the ones you need to stick to. If you issue with them, then you got an issue with us helping out, the youngest of our service members. And I'm not going to say that's just because we have, challenges of recruiting and retention. I'm saying this because every freaking service member counts. Everyone. We have trained them. We've invested in them. They have a future in our institution, and we owe it to them. And if we have leaders that don't want to follow what our leaders are putting out as far as, this is the command message, this is how we're going to get after helping our folks, then they have got to make a choice themselves. And that choice is to get out of the way so our folks can get help. And
you're right. And I think if there's a message that we can pass on to leadership is watch what you say. I mean, I heard it the other day. I heard, well, if that person wants to commit suicide, there's nothing we can do about it. Why would you say something that stupid? I'm sorry, but we're investing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, so there is something we can do about it. So, for leaders, and I heard another one, hey, at least you're not in a foxhole. If you're struggling, it doesn't matter if you're in a freaking foxhole or not. And, those are the comments coming from leadership that, I hate to say this, but it's literally killing these kids. They hear that and they think I'm weak. That means that stigma that you and I are talking about defeating has just been reinforced with a sledgehammer, that it's there when someone says that. So, it's all of our jobs to do suicide prevention.
And thank you, because I was gonna not say it, but I'm gonna say it because you said that. I mentioned emotional intelligence earlier, and I think it's extremely important. And it's basically us understanding our service members where they are. We're not talking about having an Oprah moment or a Dr. Phil moment with them. We're just talking about understanding who they are and how to get them the help that they need. That's all there is to it. When people want to call that weakness, I think sometimes there's weakness in people just trying to push back on the fact that somebody wants to get help. They're not trying to get out of doing work. They just want to be able to get back and do the work without any distractions.
Yeah, and that's it, because as well as I do, if we struggle with PTSD, it affects our work. I mean, our productivity is totally contingent upon our mental health. Our physical health is totally contingent upon our mental health. So it's more important that we're cognizant of that and getting that help. And you saw me yesterday or day before, I was almost dying from breathing too hard because I'm trying to get back in shape. My spine is all metal, so it's made it really hard for me for a lot of years. And, we've got to get that help. And I had to finally say, hey, how do I do this? I went through a PTSD program. Well, right now it's a year ago. And you'd have died laughing because I promised everybody that I was going to post on it every day. And the first week, all I could do is, and excuse my language, folks, this effing program sucks. I don't know why I'm doing it. It just kept getting worse through the week. And then Monday came and it was like, wait, it clicked. Well, this is why we're doing that. And then I was like, okay, let me reevaluate what I was saying last week. It's not so bad. And by the end of it, hey, I'm done. I went from nightmares pretty much every night to maybe one a month. I went from triggers that were everywhere to rarely being triggered. And all I did, I got a stellate ganglion block and I did 2 weeks of 1 hour a day mental health counseling. And it really, yeah. And, there's programs at pretty much every university now that are designed specifically for our military, our first responders. So what I'm saying with that is there's no excuse to struggle anymore. We've got programs out there that can help you. Most of them are free. You don't have to pay for them. You don't have to leave your job. Tell your command you need an hour a day. I'm going to guarantee you there's no command on the planet that's going to say no to an hour a day to get your mental health. And see, you can answer that one better than me. Would you tell one of your people they can't have an hour a day?
Oh, absolutely not. Because the value that I place on them, and I know not just me, but more importantly, their families have, in them. There's no way I wouldn't want them to be at their absolute best. Because at the end of the day, if they're not in the fight totally, they're not in the fight.
You're not in the fight.
Think about it. They're not in the fight. And then, of course, if they go out and get the help that they need and they come back, then I've got a fully upright and engaged person, one that knows themselves better than we do and will seek the help that they need. And two, like you said earlier, now they can identify those and the other people in the workplace are folks we come in contact with when we're touring around the country. So that's extremely important. I know you're monitoring the questions, and I think it's important just to say this for those who are thinking, there are leaders out there that make it difficult for people to seek help. And we don't know who they are until it happens. And it's one of those things where, you've got to make an informed decision to continue to let the right people know. And when you're running into folks that will make your life a living hell because you're asking for help, there is somebody out there that's waiting to help you. Don't stop because you get a no once, twice, 3 times. Do not stop. There's too many opportunities, as you said, Dave, to get help, that we just can't let a few people that just want to say, hey, you're trying to get out of work. You don't want to do this. You want to do that. They want to make life a living hell. You want to be brought back early from your deployment. Fine. Say those things about me. I'll get the help that I need.
Yep.
I'll get the help that I need. And those leaders eventually will be found out. But I will tell you, if you know who they are, you got to let somebody know, because if not, that's going to be a living hell, not just for you, but other people too.
And that's we don't live in that. When you and I were coming up in the military, it was a whole different thing. I mean, everything we heard was power through it. Broke your leg, you broke your arm. Well, is it bleeding? No, then power through it. I mean, and that's just, that was our mentality. Now, thank God, we finally figured out that we need to be on a more talk through it rather than power through it. And these kids now are really fortunate with that. I just read something that I love it. I love hearing. Our wing psychological health director, Susan Stein, briefed that the only thing we are not prepared to handle is life without you. My God, that says it so freaking well. We cannot handle life without you. We can handle fixing you, but we cannot handle, your family can't handle, your friends and the country. I mean, you are one of our elite. Stay that way.
Yeah, I love that too. The great thing about that is that's not a question that the individual that's thinking about hurting themselves can answer. If that makes sense. Hey, they think, if someone thinks you're better off without me, go ask them. Go ask them that question. And I guarantee you, somebody's going to say, hey, well, what are you talking about? What is this all about? Who do we need to help you get in contact with so that this doesn't become a question again?
Yeah, and you're right. There's nothing that's going on in your life that we can't fix or can't at least help. I mean, I'd probably get another million emails if I said there's nothing we can't fix, but there's pretty much everything we can fix. We're wrapping up on time, so let's run through the questions. Since Guard members do not necessarily see each other that often, Does C. Whitehead have any specific tips for staying connected and engaged? Good question.
Yes. As a 58-year-old man, I am learning more about social media and about these doggone phones than I ever want to learn. And there are great opportunities to set up chat groups, just to pick up the email and do texting every day, once a week, however you decide you want to set it up. Every morning when I get up, I send a text to my siblings, and it's just a simple hey, good morning, Team Whitehead. There's 7 of us still remaining. I had to check. But it's just one of those things that just maintains that connectivity. And if they don't hear it for a couple of days, hey, where are you? What's going on? What part of the world are you in? It's just something as simple as that. And it doesn't have to be a huge group, because you don't want it too big to where it's not manageable.
Right.
But you know that there's just a few people that that you need to stay connected to, and especially those that you've got that not so warm and fuzzy about, that you're like, I need to make sure that I'm checking in with Tony on a regular basis. And then every now and again, I may need to pick up the phone and call, as opposed to just a text. But yeah, something as simple as a chat group, or every now and again, because our especially the Army Joes, they're really good about it, because they really work on that team concept. Find something that you and or your family can do with the other families, so that there is some communication outside that service member ring, that will say, hey, something's going on with Tony. How about, is it going on with Joe too?
Yeah, and I see another question. So Monica, the answer to that is no, I didn't keep that list, but I can certainly put one together easy enough. Just reach out to me through the chat or on my email, and I will get it to you. It's DACCON at Oscar Mike David Sierra Paul.com. That's OMDSP.com. And I'll get you those questions. I'll have to go through my old person memory to remember them all, but I will get it for you. We do have some other comments about bad experiences that have happened. And we know, there's no way around the fact there are bad experiences that happen. We're getting better at it. There's absolutely, we're not perfect, and not saying. Here's a question for you. Tony, what do you do to stay so sharp? You're a resiliency machine. What do you do to take time out? That's from Chief Rakakis. I think that's how you say that.
Yeah, that's my fellow defender buddy from New Jersey. I will tell you, probably one of the things I do, and I just talked to you about it, is texting my family every morning. Another thing is I enjoy my workplace, and we still have those things where there's personality difference in the workplace. But I enjoy coming to work, and I enjoy just interacting with the people I work with, because you spend most of your time here. And if you don't, that's one of those things that can really have a bearing on your resiliency. The other is, when I need to go and visit friends, I get on a plane and go. And oftentimes I don't talk about going, because I think it's just something that I need to do. And it's just to get away from work and to get away from everything, and just to talk to the people about the fact that, I need to talk about, or I need to have a conversation that isn't related to work, but it's just related about me, which is something that I struggled to do with for years. And Chief, that's sitting in the room with me, Carnesius, knows that. But I'm getting better about it.
And one thing I can say, and I'll tell, because we do have a lot of guardsmen on this, is between C and General Hokanson, you don't get a better team for protecting the interests of their men and women than the two of them. So you're fortunate in that. I can't say thank you enough for what you're both doing to protect the 444,000 members that you have. Let's see.
Before you leave that, I want to say this too. And thanks for that, Rakagas. So one of the things I do as well is, obviously we get these suicide reports or deaths that come across my desk every morning. One of the things I'm intentional about doing is, the day of I get the notice, or the day after, I call that command senior enlisted leader for that state to find out how things are going. But I also call to ask them how they're doing, because if we're not cognizant of the fact that we get stuff like that every single day, that can wear us out too. And so I call to check on them as much as I do to check to see what they need from us.
Depending on your time, we're over here. One thing I would like to say is, so sorry to our brothers and sisters in the Tennessee Guard for the loss of their 2 pilots.
Yeah.
We suffered that exact same loss. Well, we had 3 of our pilots killed here in Idaho 3 years ago. So, we know what you're going through. So, so sorry for your loss. One thing, Chief, I'd like to touch on, see before we go. We developed what's called Suicide Prevention Squads, SPS. And it's a group no more than 10 strong. And we're at least once a week, they all communicate together, whether it be Zoom, text, phone, whatever. Each one of them has to talk to each other. And it's amazing the difference from when they start these little squads to 6 months later, how much the morale of all 10 of the people increases in that little time. That's why we make all of our, fire teams are small, squads are small. It's because it forces a brotherhood that includes everybody in it. So, think about creating a group of your brothers and sisters that can be together, check on them all the time. Just make your life about their life, and the same in return. You can't beat it. It is incredible how much it will help you. See, anything else you'd like to say?
I like the brotherhood thing. There's one that's kind of it's off the books, but my little squad there is Rico, Chemo, and AD. It's just the 4 of us. And when we get on, we laugh and we joke, but it's about making sure that we just spend that quality time just listening to each other. And it makes all the difference in the world. And like you said, I know we're about to close, so I'll just say thank you for affording me the opportunity to represent our National Guard, because I want to tell you, we've got some amazing service members that do phenomenal work. I mean, between what we do for our Title 10 mission, our homeland defense, natural disasters, civil unrest, civil disturbance, and then of course floods, fires, the Southwest border, COVID response. I mean, you name it, our guardsmen are there. And some of those challenges are the commitment they have between all those things they do there, a family and a civilian employer, and that's a lot. But they get it done. And like you said, we still deal with our suicide challenges, and we're getting after it. We're not going to stop until we can find a way to make sure that, if we can stop all of them, we will, but we don't know how that's going to work. We're not mind readers, but because we're not mind readers, we're not going to give up. And I thank you for making sure that people know that as leaders. Just because we can't, stop all the suicides, it doesn't mean we don't continue to try. And for everybody listening, if you are a Guard member, thank you for your service. Thank you to your family, your employers, and anybody else that's supporting you while you're getting after defending our nation. And do not let the sun go down without asking for help if you need it. 988. And then, of course, if nothing else, call Dave.
Yep. Get a hold of us. We will find you a program. We will protect your name. Nobody will ever know you called us. So whatever we can do to help, we will. Generally, generally after we do these broadcasts, we will get 5 to 10 people who will email, call, who need help. And that's why we continue doing these. This video was forever now. Somebody will see it and say, oh, there's C. They hear it, they see, hey, I'm in trouble, and they call. So thank you for taking the time. I know you've got an incredibly busy schedule there. Chief Cornish, thank you for arranging all this, and everybody else, thank you for being here. Chief, want to extend an invitation to you and your team. We have Lethal Means webinar with Dr. Brian coming up July 7th at 1400. And for all of our listeners, we have Admiral Fagan, Commandant of the Coast Guard, on April 7th at 1400. So we will see you all soon. If you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of us. Thank you all. Thank you, Chief.
Hey, Dave, quick alibi. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing.
You are very welcome. See you and have a great day.